The clock is ticking, and the silence in the Persian Gulf is more deafening than a sonic boom. 3 a.m. local time. Somewhere in the narrow blue corridor between Iran and Oman, two of the most powerful symbols of American reach, the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford, cut through the warm, dark water. Sailors are at their stations, radar is sweeping, and sonar is pinging. On the surface, it looks like a routine display of professional confidence. But deep within the windowless intelligence centers beneath the Pentagon, the maps are telling a story that no one wants to read aloud. For the first time in history, Iran, Russia, and China haven't just gathered, they have integrated. This isn't a drill, and it isn't just about a waterway. It's about a 15-day ultimatum issued by the White House that is currently being ignored by a ghost fleet that has no intention of blinking. The mood in the Situation Room just shifted from containment to a full-blown crisis. And the reason is a new geometry of power that threatens to turn the most expensive ships in the world into floating targets. To understand why the world is holding its breath, you have to look at the geography. The Strait of Hormuz is just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Through this tiny gap flows 20% of the world's daily oil supply. It is the throat of the global economy. And right now, a three-nation fist is closing around it. This isn't just a military exercise, it's a demonstration of a new reality where American carriers are no longer the only predators in the water. We are witnessing the launch of Maritime Security Belt 2026, and the rules of engagement just changed forever. To understand the magnitude of what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz right now, you need to first understand the geography of power. The strait is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, with shipping lanes that measure only 2 miles in each direction. Through that gap flows approximately 20% of the world's total oil supply every single day. All of it squeezes through a choke point so narrow that a determined military force could shut it like a fist closing around the throat. But the real danger isn't just physical. It's financial. The financial minefield is Iran's most potent weapon. They don't even need to detonate a single one of their 6,000 naval mines to win. The moment credible intelligence emerges that the IRGC has begun loading mines onto their fast boats, the global economy begins to bleed. Maritime insurers pull coverage for oil tankers within hours. No coverage means no transit. No transit means no oil flow. Without Iran firing a single weapon, and without giving Washington a clean legal trigger for a response, the world enters a state of economic cardiac arrest. This is sea denial in its purest form. Iran has spent 40 years turning this coastline into a layered killing field. They have transformed 3 strategic islands, Abu Musa, Greater Tunb, and Lesser Tunb, into unsinkable aircraft carriers. From these outposts, drone swarms are already in the engagement zone before any American defensive system can even fully cycle its software. Each interceptor fired by a U.S. destroyer costs between $400,000 and $2 million, while an Iranian drone costs less than a used car. The math is simple, brutal, and consistently unfavorable for the defender. They are forcing the U.S. Navy to fight a war of attrition where the cost of defense outweighs the cost of attack by a factor of 100 to 1. While the world focuses on the massive surface ships, the real nightmare is lurking in the shallow dark. In the deep, open ocean, American anti-submarine warfare is essentially unmatched. But in the 200 feet of turbulent, acoustically chaotic water of the Gulf, the math changes significantly. Iran operates the Ghadir-class and Fate-class submarines, vessels that are purpose-built for this specific environment. These are mini-subs, nearly impossible to track because they can literally sit on the seafloor and blend into the background noise of the seabed. More than 20 of these Ghadir-class mini-subs have been positioned along the predictable approach routes of the U.S. carrier groups. Because the shipping channels are so narrow, a submarine there doesn't need to hunt its target, it simply waits for the target to come to it. Think of it as a knife fight in a dark closet. Even if the U.S. detects one, the rules of engagement are a nightmare. Do you fire on a sub in international waters during a drill and risk starting World War III? Or do you wait until it launches a torpedo? By the time the bubbles are spotted, the reaction window is measured in seconds. These subs are the silent insurance of the Iranian coast. They don't have the range to cross the Atlantic, but they don't need it. Their job is to hold the US fleet at arm's length, creating a no-go zone where even the most advanced sonar in the world becomes a liability. The thermal layers and salt content of the Gulf water create sound tunnels that can hide a sub just a few hundred yards away from a destroyer's sensors. It is a technological blind spot that Tehran has spent decades exploiting, and in 2026, they have perfected the art of the wait. When Russia arrived for the 2026 drill, many Western analysts laughed. Moscow sent a single corvette, the Stoiky. To anyone measuring power by hull count, Russia's contribution looks almost symbolic, a desperate cry for relevance from a nation whose navy took a real toll during the conflict in Ukraine. But that reading misses the point entirely. Russia isn't here to provide firepower. They are here to provide the invisible shield. That corvette carries the most battle-hardened electronic warfare, or EW, systems on the planet. Systems refined through years of active conflict against NATO-supplied equipment. We're talking about radar jamming, GPS spoofing, and the ability to interfere with the sensor networks that carrier strike groups depend on for situational awareness. During the recent protests in Tehran, rumors surfaced that Russian EW was already being used to degrade satellite communications with shocking efficiency. Now that tech is in the water. When Russia is physically present, this stops being a regional drill and becomes a trilateral deployment of 3 permanent UN Security Council members. This raises the diplomatic cost of any American response by an order of magnitude. Every justification for American action now has to account for the fact that a Russian vessel is in the line of fire. Russia is providing the nuclear credibility and the diplomatic weight that transforms 3 navies into a single untouchable system. They are the referees that ensure the US can't just bully its way through the strait without risking a global escalation that goes far beyond the Persian Gulf. If Russia is the shield, China is the hammer. For the 2026 exercise, Beijing deployed its Type 055 Renhai-class destroyer. This is a 13,000-ton monster with 112 vertical launch cells. But the real headline isn't the ship, it's what's inside the cells. As of late 2025, it was confirmed that these destroyers are carrying hypersonic anti-ship missiles, likely the YJ-21. A hypersonic terminal approach at Mach 5 or faster compresses the defensive response window from minutes to mere seconds. The US Navy has publicly acknowledged the hypersonic threat as a critical priority in congressional testimony as recently as 2024. Admitted they have no confirmed operational defense against this specific type of terminal maneuver. But China didn't send the Type 055 alone. It came with the Luoyang Wang-1, a dedicated intelligence collection ship. This vessel doesn't fire a single shot. Its entire purpose is to track U.S. carrier strike group movements in real time, recording every radar emission frequency and every communications protocol. It is building a complete electromagnetic portrait of the U.S. fleet. This ship shares its data feed directly with Iranian launch sites. Historically, the targeting problem was Iran's greatest weakness. They had the missiles, but they couldn't see well enough to hit a moving target at range. China just solved that. Now, Iranian commanders aren't guessing where the U.S. carriers are, they are watching 2-second updates fed directly from Chinese sensors. The targeting blindness that once protected the U.S. Navy has been cured by Beijing, and they didn't even have to sign a treaty to do it. Now let's talk about what happens when the invisible shield and the hypersonic hammer work together. The U.S. Navy relies on something called cooperative engagement capability. CEC. This is the unified brain that allows a carrier strike group to function as a single organism. It links every radar on every ship into one picture, but the Russian EW systems are designed to attack the specific frequency bands that this brain runs on. They don't try to destroy the signal. They just introduce lag. In modern warfare, lag is a death sentence. At 0314 AM in our simulation, the Russian EW activates. It's surgical. The shared tactical picture on the US Aegis cruisers begins to flicker. The unified defensive brain develops a stutter. At the same time, the Chinese intelligence ship is pumping out high-fidelity targeting data to Iranian land-based batteries. Suddenly, the US commanders find themselves fighting in the dark while the enemy has night vision goggles. This is the invisible power that changed the game. It's not about who has the most ships, it's about who controls the flow of information. The political ceiling on American action has been structurally lowered not by a weapon, but by the presence of this integrated nervous system. The US fleet is currently operating in a degraded environment where their most advanced sensors are being lied to by Russian spoofers. It's a psychological and technological trap that forces the defender to hesitate, and in a world where hypersonics are moving at Mach 5, hesitation is the same thing as a hit. The final phase of the nightmare scenario begins with a saturated attack from multiple vectors. 47 Iranian fast attack craft emerge simultaneously from coastal inlets, splitting the defensive focus of both carrier groups. While the Aegis systems are busy tracking these surface threats, the real kill shot comes from above. Iranian ballistic missiles rise from hardened mountain silos on near vertical trajectories. They dive toward the carrier's flight deck at hypersonic speeds from nearly straight above. This is the geometric blind spot that naval architects have debated since the first carrier sailed. Most naval radars are designed to look toward the horizon, not straight up at the zenith. The Aegis system must simultaneously handle the aftermath of the first attack, coordinate with ships whose data links are stuttering, track swarming boats, and engage near vertically descending ballistic threats. Because of the real-time positioning updates from the Chinese intelligence ship, these warheads don't guess. They know exactly where the flight deck will be. They are smart warheads with terminal maneuvering capabilities that shift the intercept geometry in the final seconds, making it nearly impossible for an SM-3 interceptor to get a clean kill. The crew is calling shots on incomplete information, in the dark, under fire, in the narrowest stretch of the world's most volatile waterway. This is the new geometry of war, and it's a scenario that has the Pentagon working overtime to find an answer. As the sun begins to rise over the Strait of Hormuz, the most chilling realization sets in. The strength of this coalition was never about hull counts. One Russian corvette and one Chinese destroyer would not frighten a US carrier group by numbers alone. What changed Washington's calculus was the invisible transfer of capability. It was Russian electronic warfare born in the trenches of Ukraine. It was Chinese sensor technology that cured Iran's targeting blindness. It was the diplomatic architecture that made every American move a potential trigger for a war with 3 different nations at once. 7 years of exercises have turned improvisation into a lethal design. Iran didn't become more powerful because Russia sent more ships. They became more powerful because for the first time they could see, and because the cost of what America might do in response has been raised by forces that never even needed to pull a trigger. The Strait of Hormuz is still 21 miles wide, but the question hanging over every mile of it is no longer just about power. It's about whether that power means what it used to. As the 15-day ultimatum expires, the world is watching to see if the age of the carrier just met its match in a ghost fleet that refuses to move. The answer to that question might be the most important revelation of 2026, and it's one that will shape the next century of global conflict.